And we're back. Today's guest is a trailblazing broadcast journalist and television personality who has redefined sports media for women. She made her history on Vice TV with her show Cari and Jamil Stick to Sports as the first Black woman to host a late night cable news show. She hosted the Cari Champion show on Amazon and frequently appears as a contributor on CNN. Her podcast, Naked Sports with Cari Champion, delivers candid conversations reflecting her signature unfiltered style. And through her foundation, Brown Girls Dream, she champions mentorship and advocacy for women of color pursuing careers in sports broadcasting. Please welcome our girl who I am so honored to have on our show, Cari Champion.
Cari!
I feel really important.
You are.
Thank you. I have to talk in this register because you are so kind. Loni, I am a huge fan. Thank you for having me. Erica, you are my girl. You hold me down.
Same, my girl.
So wonderful to be here with you ladies. I'm excited.
I am. You know what? What have you been working on? Because you work on so much, but what are you currently working on?
You know, I have, it's funny, like probably you all have, I have 18 jobs. So this is like a typical day and I'll explain it. Yesterday I was doing my pod, which is Naked Sports, which you talked about, and it's every Monday. And this particular season, I had the great idea to focus, my first few episodes, my first 10 episodes on the WNBA and what's been happening because it's been transformative.
Yes.
And I did a docu-series called The Making of a Rivalry with Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. Oh. And I focused my first 6 or 7 episodes on them. And I have been really busy with that because for the very first time in a long time, I am dusting off my writing hands and I'm writing. So it is documenting the WNBA when it started in 1998 to where we are right now and how it is really something that everybody wants to be a part of. And I feel like it's great, but I also, if I'm honest with you, I think you ladies can relate to being the first in many areas of what you've done. Mm-hmm. And for the ladies who were the first, there is no jealousy, but there is a bit of bittersweetness in the sense that we've been building this league for years. And all of a sudden, you mean to tell me we could have had chartered flights all of this time, or we could have had the attention and the marketing and the money all of this time? Why must it be when someone comes along who is America's darling that you all are paying attention? And this is nothing, we're not taking anything away from Caitlin Clark. I think that she is a superstar in her own right. But these are legitimate questions that a league that is 70% Black has to ask. And so I have been documenting that. And then the very last episode we had was with Gina Prince Bythewood. And it was beautiful because to me, Love and Basketball was the very first time I've seen a Black woman centered, a Black female athlete centered in a film and celebrated. And it was just beautiful. So I did that during the day. And then at night I went on CNN to talk about politics and things of that nature. So those are the two things that have me.
This is why we love you.
Well, can I just give a shout out to my girl because people think, she's gorgeous, but she's also one of the smartest people I know. And also a fellow Bruin. So UCLA, shout out to my girl. Listen, she's doing it and I'm so proud of you as always, sis.
Well, that's why we asked you to come on because we got to get into this conversation. We're talking about women being overlooked in the workplace. All three of us here deal in occupations where women are the minority. So this is going to be very interesting. From Vice President Kamala Harris busting her butt just to prove her competence to Hollywood downplaying hit movies led by women while giving excuses for flop after flop from the fellas. These double standards are real and exhausting. So this week, we're getting into how women can support each other and stand tall in their greatness, despite the emotional toll, systemic biases, and the struggle to keep hope alive when burnout hits hard. So let's talk about being overlooked in the workplace. Cari, you have navigated so much. What is your take on today's topic?
I think we see it every day. Unfortunately, I think when we have these kinds of honest, real conversations, there's a section of society that will tune out automatically because they feel as if it is complaining or whining or it doesn't affect them. And a friend of mine told me something the other day, and I really appreciated him. He said it's a luxury to not have to think about gender or race unless it's convenient or when asked. And we don't have that luxury. And I feel like it happens way too often. It is normalized and it is unfortunate. But there are the people like yourselves, like the Lonis and the Ericas of the world, that live in these spaces and really do the work that needs to be done. And it doesn't all have to look the same. That's one thing I do have to say. Like, you don't have to have a podcast calling people out or saying what you want. It's just being who you are. That is an act of resistance. And oftentimes, when I have been overlooked in my workspace, just as a woman covering sports, it's frustrating, it's difficult, it's exhausting. It takes its toll on you, and you have to be able to handle it. You just learn. You have to handle it in ways that allow you to find your peace and not kill you. You know what I mean? I have talked to so many women. I talked about the WNBA, and I use that as an example because it goes across all disciplines. And the reason why I wanted to interview Gina, writer and director of Love and Basketball, Gina told me that she started writing that film before the WNBA was created. I said, well, how would you do it differently today? She says, well, first of all, it wouldn't be able to be made as a film today. Mm-hmm. It would be on Netflix, if you will.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
A lifetime.
If that,
lifetime,
yeah.
right? If that.
Mm-hmm.
She was like, so just so we're clear. And then she said, I look at the first time that I've ever gotten international coverage or top tier treatment. It's when she did The Old Guard. And she had one black lead, and it was Charlize Theron, who was the main. Mm-hmm. And she had been told for so long that her films don't travel. And every time someone sat down to talk to her during foreign press, they asked her about Love and Basketball. That was the first question.
Wow. That's amazing.
It reminds me, and it's also a reminder, not even reminding me, it's a reminder for all of us that no matter how frustrated we get in being overlooked, the people who matter know and will acknowledge our greatness, and we all have our turn. We just do. It just comes at a glacial pace.
How do you handle it? Because you know it's happening. You know that it's happening. And if you say something, if you're black, you're the angry black woman.
And even if you don't say anything, that's the key, Loni. Even if you don't say anything, friend, we're always TOO, even if we don't say anything.
Absolutely.
No matter, which is why I have made resolve at this age to just be. You know what I mean? Be. Because if I do too little, it's still too much. If I do too much, it's too much. I come too far to do too little, so I'm going to do too much. And the reality is the way we handle it is continuing to be excellent, because that's the only way we can stay in these rooms and be in this world and make this money and be able to rub elbows with them, because they cannot deny our excellence, although they do not celebrate it. They cannot deny it.
Well, going back to your point, Cari, because I think it's such a good one. I think it applies specifically to us as women of a certain age who pioneered in a way, because we were the first, and being the first kind of gave us a little bit of a hard shell, because we had to, again, be the only woman in the room, the only black woman in the room. Now, thank God, women coming behind us, we paved a way for women in their 20s and 30s to kind of be amongst each other and have allies, but we didn't have that. And so that's what's gotten us to where we are, because we've got thick skins. Like, bring it on. What else? I've been in comedy rooms since I was in my 20s, where I will pitch a joke and, guys don't hear it. And then a guy will pitch the same joke, 5 minutes later, and it'll get in the script. And I always joke about, I think, like, we as women, men have learned how to tune out our voices, because it's like we're like Charlie Brown's teacher, it's like wah, 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 wah. I mean, our husbands do it, our bosses do it, but I think for me, to your point, at this point in my 40s, I own that space. I claim that space, where I was like, oh, can I be in this room? Thanks guys for letting me in. Now it's like, no, this is my space. I belong here, and you're going to listen to me.
I love that. But also, the reason why I was asking you, Cari, about, how do you handle it, as I'm still dealing with it to this day. Let me tell you something. I've been dealing in this industry for 20 years.
Well, comedy's got to be the hardest. I mean, being a stand-up.
Well, not only that, it's just the art and the act of comedy. Do you know how far we've come as plus size women? Like, a plus size woman, back in the day, we were always the sixth person on the call sheet, because we were funny, and also we were the minority. And then finally, today, I feel like people should be thanking me. Michelle Boutier, I'm going to call
Yeah.
out. You need to thank me.
Michelle, flowers. We need flowers.
Yeah, it's the norm.
Yes.
You know, it takes somebody to do that. And I think, Carrie, that's what you have been doing when it comes to sports broadcast. I mean, first of all, what made you want to even get into this type of field?
First of all, Loni, thank you. I think about all the women I see now on TV that are coming after me, and everyone's like, they're so pleasant, they're so nice. I was like, yeah, because I had to kick everybody's ass. That's why they're so pleasant and they so nice. And it's this real thing where they just don't understand, and there's no way we can make them understand until it's their turn.
Right.
So that's the first thing where I separate my frustration. I don't expect someone behind me to understand what it took for them to be where they are. I don't even think they have the appreciation. They can't. It's impossible. I don't even know if I had the appreciation for no, I love me some Oprah, don't get me wrong, but I don't know if I had the appreciation for the local news anchors that I watched, or the Sean Robinson. I used to roll up on Sean Robinson all the time. Every time I saw her somewhere, I'd be like, girl, you are it, and I am going to be it. And she was always just so gracious. Probably thought I was a stalker. But I don't think I even appreciated what she had to go through until I met someone who worked with her, and they were a young buck, and they were like, you don't know how they used to treat her. Like, there's always, time will always tell your story, Loni. Time will always tell your story, Erica.
Yes.
It's easy to say it right now because, I'm all zen and I had therapy the other day. But catch me Friday. I ain't going to be feeling like this. But time will always tell our story. Like, it just will. It's just the only way that it works. And I started in sports. I was a local news anchor, or a local news reporter, let's be clear. But sports was always my background because my now 94-year-old grandmother played segregated basketball in the South. And when she moved to California in the Great Migration, she became a Lakers fan when they came to Los Angeles. And she would love to watch the Lakers games, right? And she didn't have anybody to go with. And so she would take me because I was so young. And I was like, sure, I'll go with you. I used to take the bus with my grandmother to Lakers games. I tell this story all the time, and you never know how your life affects you. And so because I loved her so much and wanted to be her, I was automatically a Laker fan. And I fell in love with sports. She would explain the game to me. We'd sit in these really cheap nosebleed seats. And all I ever wanted to do was be a Lakers reporter after I was a local news reporter. I was going to be a Laker reporter. That was it. That was my little tiny dream. God was like, oh, you cute. And that's how I fell in love with sports. And then I ended up in a backwards way, starting at the Tennis Channel. And then I was working at the US Open, and I saw ESPN covering the sport better than we were covering it. And I was like, I should go work for them. That's what I literally said in my mind. This is the beauty of not knowing anything. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to fly myself out there and I'm just going to see what happens. And I flew myself out there and sat in the lobby till somebody talked to me. Yes, I did, girl. They didn't come for me. I found them because they don't be knowing. And so I met someone who took interest in me, and I sent him my resume reel for like the next 2 years. And one day he called me and said, we have an opening on a show called First Take with Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Would you like to come and audition? And I said, you bet. You betcha. You betcha. And I just went in knowing and believing. See, that is the thing of the original part of what I said. You both, and I know Erica intimately, Loni, I know of you, but you both are excellence, and time often will tell our story. Even when we have lulls in our career, right? We feel like we're still not being appreciated sometimes. Ultimately, at the end of the day, because of the excellence that we are, it's just a habit. It's just how we live and who we are. Time will tell our story, and we will get our just due.
Speaking of which, can I share the story of how we met and how we came together and how we became girls?
Yes, you can share this.
Love it.
So I picked her up in a bar one night. No, we were brought together by another mutual friend who's also, a major player in the world as a woman. Our girlfriend, Lisa Ellis, who came from the music business. So I would love to have her to talk about what's going on in that crazy world. But so Carrie has a very famous story about a scandal that happened to her in her career. And we were going to do a show about it. We were pitching a show that took off from this specific incident, which was a complete game changer in her life. Do you go ahead and explain the situation? It's better coming from you.
Oh, so many scandals. If you guys are listening, so many scandals.
Well, yes.
This main one was when I was on First Take, Floyd Mayweather, when I was hosting and I was just a moderator, Floyd Mayweather, Stephen A. and Skip talked about how much they admired this man and how great he is. And as a woman, and by the way, you would think I'm talking about 1919. I'm literally talking like 2014, 2013. And Floyd Mayweather said that two things. He had been arrested a few times for allegedly beating his partner, domestic violence. And then he also had made a comment about a guy by the name of Ray Rice who was caught on camera. I don't know if you remember. He was caught by an elevator camera for hitting his wife, his then fiance, close fist, and she was literally knocked out, and he carried her out of the elevator. And Floyd was like, "That's not a big deal. You shouldn't take that man's career for him. I can't believe you suspended him for 7 games, whatever." And so, because I was a moderator, I was not allowed, honestly, not allowed to share my opinion. And that was the rule for the moderator then, because that was the first female moderator, at least full time in that kind of debate era show. That was the beginning of those debate era shows. And then I left and went to SportsCenter. I hosted my own show, which was one of the most popular shows, amen, with a guy by the name of David Lloyd, who I love so much. Floyd was doing what we call a car wash, and he came on my show. And I asked him, I said, "Floyd, I have a hard time." My question was really honest. I said, "I have a hard time with a few things, and I think your female fans want to reconcile the man that is in the ring and out of the ring. You have been arrested for A, B, C, and D. Can you please talk about that?" And this man looked at me like, you about to get it. And so that's a polite way of saying it. Like, how
Wow.
dare you ask me that question? How dare you? And I said, "Well, Floyd, here's the documentation. You've been arrested for hitting the mother of your child. Your child testified in court. This is not something I'm making up, and I'm asking you." He's like, "Well, you don't know. I don't know what's going on with you and your boyfriend and what happens in your house." And I was just like, he got very, very defensive. And at the time, his then publicist walked in front of the camera and kind of was looking at me like, "Stop it." You know what I mean? This is all on live television. And my lovely co-anchor, David Lloyd, God, I love that man. He leaned in, like physically leaned in, because he could see Floyd was getting agitated. And he leaned in and he was like, "Floyd, I understand what you're saying about what happens at home, but you are a public figure and it has been documented. So we're asking you, every athlete we know isn't being arrested for beating his wife or hitting his girlfriend or whatever the case may be." Like, he kind of began to join the conversation with me because he could see it was getting uncomfortable. So the interview's over, and I am waiting for the pushback, and you could just feel it. It was just awkward. I had pissed people off, the black men mainly, and you can YouTube it today. It was over 5,000 comments about what a sellout I was and how dare I, and I'm trying to take down the black man. And I'm like, "Well, what about the black woman?"
Thank you.
And I remember meeting Erica and a few other women, Lisa and another partner of ours at the time, and they were like, "We should start it from there," because it was right around the time where we're just like, women are not, as we well know, in this industry, we endure so much, and our voices don't matter, and all we want to be is seen and heard. And that was one of these incidents where I also knew that I could make a difference, but I knew I didn't matter because no one at all said anything to me like, "Good job, I'm glad you did that. That's so good." No man, anyway. And every woman was like, "Thank you," but quietly, like, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." But all the men were like, "How dare you try to take down another brother? You must be working for the man." And I'm like, "Okay, yeah. No, not working for the man, but what about the women who have been beat?"
And what about being a journalist? Like, you are a journalist, and for someone to tell you not to do your job because you have this, quote unquote, powerful black man there. That's what you went to school for. That's what I'm talking about when it comes to being in the workplace and having to bow down to the patriarchy, in our perspective.
In our business.
Yeah, because obviously sports is the highest patriarchy that we've had next to politics, and to be silenced and to be told you can't ask a question is completely counterintuitive to what you do.
Well, that's because she's one of the first.
It's still happening though, Lonnie. It's still happening. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
still happening.
Yeah.
Most recently, I don't know if you all know Monica McNutt. She told Stephen A. that he could be covering the WNBA sooner than later. He had the power. And the way she said it wasn't like, "Oh, I'm trying to try you," but it came across like, challenging him. And I know behind the scenes, like for days afterwards, I know that she was in a personal hell because of what she had to deal
Mm-hmm.
with.
Well, that's what I mean. How do you handle? Because I mean, I've been, in that situation, being on a daytime talk show for 10 years, where
Yeah.
I've had to stand up and say, okay, this is what I'm going to talk about because this is the right thing to do, or I'm gonna, no, I don't need this guest on, or I'm not gonna come on because,
I think you think of the
you know,
repercussions. Like I
yeah,
think sometimes in the moment it just happens. Like I know you've had some of the moments on live television where you're like, it just happened and I just said what I said and I have to deal with it afterwards. Or
right.
it was instinct to protect whomever you protected, whether it be yourself or someone else, or stand up for what you want to stand up for. But in terms of handling it, all we can do and all I have learned to do is really speak truth to power. And everybody doesn't have that.
Absolutely.
Everybody doesn't have that. And I don't require that of everyone. And it comes at a cost. It comes at not getting that next gig. It comes at people not wanting to sit with you or interview you. Or it comes at, oh, she might be a troublemaker. And then you hear things like, oh, you're not bad. People think you're a diva, but you're not bad. And you're just like, thanks. Like, when I hear that, I just go, thank you. I don't know how to be anything else. I wish I was.
But if you were a man, you wouldn't have that pushback.
Of
If
course
Stephen
not.
A asked that question, it would have been,
Of
I mean,
course
controversial,
not.
but he would have been lauded for being a good journalist, right?
He would have been lauded for being a good journalist. He would have gotten some pushback in a different way. Like
Mm.
whenever you challenge someone who is a favorite, that's what I noticed. What the thing is that people who have sight, people who can see who other people are very special people. You all know what's not right, and very few people have the ability to call it out and say it. It is a chosen call-in profession that has sometimes very little glory and reward. And it's not as if I choose to do that. Like sometimes I wish I could be like, oh, that ain't my headache. I don't feel like dealing with this today.
Right.
But in the world of I think about what you do as a comedian, and I think I can't even imagine. And I'm not judging every comedian that I've ever met, but I could not imagine, Loni.
The thing that I do want to ask is, even while you were going through this, you're in a very zen place, but did you have any allies in women or men that
Mhm.
helped you get through when you were going through these situations?
Absolutely, Loni. When you say how'd you handle it, you need a community. Some of us try to go it alone, especially Black women. We think we're gonna be a one-man band. It is
Mm-hmm.
impossible. It is
Mm-hmm.
impossible to succeed in any profession without people that you can feel safe with and share real stories. For me, it came in the form of different people that advocated for me that I didn't even know were advocating for me at times. But I have two really good incidents where I can tell you, Jamel Hill, she had a show, and when I couldn't speak on First Take, she would invite me on the show with her and Mike Hill. And they would ask me to talk about whatever the topics of the day were. And I remember there became a quick narrative of, well, how come Carrie isn't allowed to talk? Like she's seemingly smart when she's on His and Hers. So what is the problem? And I loved her so much for that. Like when people would attack me on when Twitter was a big thing and people paid attention, people would attack me and try to pit me against her. And she would be like, she's my friend. Yes, I was up for the job for First Take, but the right person has it. We are friends. You cannot make me not like her. You better get to the back of the bus with this. We are together. This is a sisterhood. And she did it in closed doors. She did it loud and proud. And I always think to myself, she's been such an advocate for women when she saw the bullshit. I don't know if we can curse. When she
Yeah, you
saw
can.
it,
Yes.
she was just always an advocate for me. And even the day that I wanted to quit, she will tell the story to this day. I picked her up and I was like, so today's my last day. I quit. And she's like, well, everybody calm down. And I was like, I've had enough. I've had enough. I've had enough because we get tired. And I had
Yes.
enough. I got tired of being picked on. I got tired for being wrong all the time. I got tired for not being allowed to talk. I got tired for talking. All the things. I was just tired. And she put me back in a space to let me know where I was at the time and how this too shall pass. And it did. But it still is frustrating. I don't care how far we've come. There is still much more work to be done. I can say that across every industry, across every profession. You talk about Michelle Buteau. You talk about different writers and Ericas that you see that are moving and moving in spaces that you want to move in. They can tell you about their headaches. No matter how far we have come, there is so much more work for us to do, which is why we, as the first for now, right? Because everybody was a first before us, and there will be more firsts. But the first for now have to stay true to what we are doing.
No, but to that point, though, I will say, like you mentioned Gina, like when I was coming up, I know early on when I was a young writer, there was that kind of crab in a barrel mentality where there can only be like one Black woman, you know, in comedy, or one Black woman per show. But I will say I've had wonderful female mentors like the late Unetta Boone or like Mara Brock-Akil, who absolutely shepherded my career and gave me opportunities because we kind of come up through a generation where, like, there is room for all of us. And that's what I try to pay forward. So I really do try to mentor young female writers, especially African-American writers. Working on shows to be showrunners for these young women coming up and give them a voice and help them get their voices out there. So I do think we're making progress. I do know that there's a lot, a long way to go, but we're getting in the room. And once we're in the room, we may be the only person in the room, but it's almost our responsibility as the person in that room to open the door for the next person to come in. That's the way I feel.
And lastly, I mean, because I've enjoyed this conversation and we talked about women champion women, but do you have any advice for men champion women?
I do. I don't think men do it enough. I'm not even calling out Black or white men. I just feel like men don't do it enough.
Why do you think that is? I
think they have the first thing, just their instinct is to avoid trouble. It's like being in any relationship. When you're in a relationship, man, they don't want to fight. They don't want to, they're like, I want that. Y'all take care. I can't. Back to earlier when you said we're just being tuned out.
Right.
They tune out what they perceive as drama, headache, trouble, thought, anything that requires them to move out of their safe, easy space. But my advice would be, I always tell my mentees to find an ally, and then not even just an ally that is a woman, but an ally that is a man, and someone preferably that doesn't look like you. Someone who is in those rooms where they really take that voice very seriously. It's important to have Black women lead you in spaces and teach you how to keep your composure and teach you the etiquette of the business and teach you how to maneuver in these rooms where they play in chess and you play in checkers. It's important for that because those games are specifically for us. Like those games they play with us are specifically for us. So your white male counterpart or your white ally may not understand that when you bring that to him. He won't understand that game because that game is only played for us. But we do need him to speak about how great we are, how smart we are, or how light we are. Like that's crazy to me that I'm even saying that out loud. It's crazy to me in 2024 someone needs to advocate for how easy we are because there is such a perception of us not being easy. It is insane to me that I have to do that.
Well, it's so interesting you say that because I have a really great white male mentor who's a big showrunner who's always advocating for me, but there is also that ego-driven male showrunner writer who's very intimidated by women like us. And so
for sure,
going to the chess game of it all or the checkers, they're playing checkers, and when we come in playing chess, it exposes their checker game, and we become a threat to them. And it's very interesting to me that that's always the person that I'm like, oh, that person's going to be worried about me exposing their non-talent. And I said, I'm not exposing it. You're exposing it. I'm just here showing people that this is what
talent looks like. Oh, you're talking about the debate. You're talking about Kamala and Donald Trump. That is an illustration of we need to be 10 times better and smarter and prepared while they can show up inadequate and mediocre at best.
100%. That's exactly
the concept of a plan. Yes, I understand.
We are the spotlight for like inadequacy. This is what excellence looks like. Don't be over here trying to play checkers when chess is over here. That's exactly right.
Well, both of you are excellent.
No, so are you, Loni Love.
And it was an excellent conversation. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you, Loni.
Carrie, thank you so much for joining us today. It has been a pleasure having you, sis. And for all our listeners, please be sure to check out Naked Sports with Cari Champion wherever you get your podcasts. When we come back, we're going to get into the takeaway with me, Loni. This is Grown Ass Women Talking.
Now it's time for Loni's takeaway. Loni,
yes.
What did we learn today?
How much did we love Carrie? Wasn't she awesome? No, seriously though, all joking aside, this is the type of woman that, I look up to. I mean, the things that she has gone through and to be so transparent And to know that even though if you're a woman who feel like you're overlooked, this is what you do if you feel like you're overlooked. Find other women that have dealt with it. And she's dealing with it in her way, by having allies around her that support her, by standing true to who she is, by finding some type of mechanism, whether it's religious or meditation. She's finding that type of way. For me, I'm trying to drink less. Because
Not me. I'm trying to drink more.
Sometimes you gotta have a little piece of wine or something like that. But no, I'm not gonna do that. But seriously, we're gonna be dealing and seeing, depending on what happens in this election, with a lot of this type of issue of a woman being overlooked. And we're going to have to deal with it as a nation, and people are going to learn a lot. So I'm just happy that we were able to have her on to give her firsthand accounts, and you can see that you can get through this. You can get through it.
Absolutely. Well, I'm hoping we don't have to get through this woman being overlooked in this election. I'm hoping that we will be celebrating, all of us together, with a woman finally being heard and given her due. But I have to point out the elephant in the room.
What is
that?
it?
Listen, I have very good taste in friends, and obviously Carrie is a very good friend of mine, so I keep good company. And so, Loni, are you going to admit that we're friends now too?
Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Grown Ass Women Talking. Please follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Come on, let's be in the club together. You're going to be in the club with me.
Leave us a 5-star rating. And don't forget to follow us. Please follow us on Instagram or subscribe to us on our YouTube at GAWT Pod. Come see me perform stand-up live in Phoenix on November the 10th, Miami Improv December the 15th. Tickets are on sale now. Get those tickets. Thanks again to Cari Champion for joining us.
And my friend Loni, bye. Love to everyone.